what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. Always with me are Philly Chris, Russ the producer, and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinthemorning.com. What's it called, New Hampshire, Chris?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
How about you, Russ?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
Liberty?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
Special guest, Chris Flail, famous comedian from California. What's it called?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
That is correct, sir. You can check out all the shenanigans that Mike G and Philly Chris are up to throughout the entire week. Check out our social media profiles. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who listen to check us out at MikeGinthemorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams. Bring you the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until 11. We've got Dan the Man Bongino. Bring you the Dan Bongino Show weekdays from noon until 3 p.m. We've got the headliner, intellectual giant Ben Shapiro. Bring you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And finally, we love having him at the Freedom Station family. We've got Michael Knowles. Bring you the Michael Knowles Show weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hit it, Russ.
You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
We've got a very special guest joining us on the Mike G in the Morning program today. We've got Chris Flail, world famous comedian out of California. He is what we call a repeat offender on this program at this point in time. Chris, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me. I'm all juiced up, Mikey. I'm ready to run through this brick wall after hearing your opening.
It looks extra sturdy behind you. That brick wall looks extra
really
sturdy. Is that
Looks pretty
I don't know if
legit.
you're gonna make it. You might get hurt. So you've been on the program a couple of times. We had such a great time with you the last couple of times that we wanted to bring you back and really have more of a long form discussion now that you've got time and find out how you really got to where you are today. But first, I want to ask you, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke to you?
A ton since the last time. So last time we spoke, I think, was about 2 months ago. I was driving to a gig I was doing in a swanky LA suburb where I was performing for a bunch of doctors and lawyers outside in about 50 degrees. So I was cutting out a whole bunch of times. Since then, we've moved from Los Angeles back to the heartland of Bakersfield, California. So we just bought a house. We're between houses right now, which is why you see the brick wall behind me, because we're currently shacking up at the in-laws while we're between homes.
Nice.
So yeah.
And
So
their
doing
home is
Bakersfield
made
gigs
entirely
during
of
the
brick.
week and out of town throughout the weekend. Yeah, that's right.
You got to have some jokes about that, Chris.
Oh, we're getting there. We're gonna have a new 20 minutes by the time this stay is over. That's for sure. So the good thing is, Mikey, we'll have within about a month, we'll have new studio for sketches and podcasts and all those things. And hopefully I can have you all join one of my broadcasts one day. Not quite the global audience, but hey, we swing hard and we try our best.
You got quite the audience in your own right, my friend.
Yeah.
I saw that you recently worked with Theo Vaughn. Is that true? The Rat King
Yeah,
himself.
the Rat King himself. Yeah, a little while ago, we're lucky here to have a bunch of people come through town. So we've had a bunch of big names come through, and every now and then I get to weasel my way on a show. And he's a super nice guy. He came in with the title belt. He did meet and greets with his fans. We did 2 shows together. He did meet and greets with both sets of fans, and it was, now he's doing theaters of a few thousand people, but then it was a few hundred people per show. Meet and greet pictures, talk with everybody, and it was the week he had just quit smoking cigarettes too. So you can't. It's never more ornery time in a smoker's life, from what I understand. He was still a pleasant guy to be around. And after the show, it's funny. It's like anytime somebody finds out that I spent the night working with him, they ask if he's the real deal, if he's that guy that he seems like on all of his shows. And I'll pull it up really quickly and just read. He sent me a text message afterwards, a couple of text messages. I'll give you the times of these text messages, and I'll tell you what he said. And it's the most Theo Von thing you've ever read in your life. So this was these texts were from 12:31 a.m. to 12:32 a.m. over a span of about 60 seconds. Text one, hey bud. Text 2, did I leave my wallet there? Text 3, it's like a little thing with my cards in it. It's like, I know what a wallet is. Text 4, text 4, maybe in the office. Text 5, never mind, I found it. That was 2 seconds.
Nice.
And then he sent me 2 pictures of
Oh, that is great.
So he's the real deal, that guy.
Needs
I
a
love
hair
how
tie.
he described to you what a wallet looks like. In case you're unfamiliar with the concept of a wallet, here's what the wallet is
Yes,
all about, right?
it's my
It
wallet,
may
but
have
it's like a little thing
a
with my
card
cards
in
in it.
there. It says driver's license at the top with my name on it.
Right.
Unreal.
That is great. That is great. So who else, if you had to talk about your hit list of people you're proud of being able to have worked with, who would come to mind, just so our audience is familiar?
Yeah, best 2 I ever worked with. The first one was Dave Attell, and it was it was one of those where I did everything wrong when I met him you could possibly do, because it was such a freak out. One of the first comedy specials I ever saw was Dave Attell on Comedy Central, and then I'm working with the guy, so you feel like your television is talking to you. And so I was just so strange and uncomfortable the whole time, but he's a really nice guy, and it seems like he kind of knows that the local opener is kind of freaking out to meet Comedy Jesus, because he came up to me after the show. He's like, hey Chris, I kind of like to take a picture with all the comics on. Do you mind if we take a picture together? And I'm like he took it out of my hands to have to ask him if we would take a picture together.
Right.
That's cool though. That's cool.
Right.
It was
What a
great.
guy.
And then
What a guy.
other
That's
one-
awesome.
it's great, right? And then the other one that was my favorite was Nick Swartzen. We got to do 3 shows together over 2 nights. And the second night, he listened to my act, and he was very complimentary. And then he gave me a tag for one of my jokes, the closing joke that I like to do. And I didn't even really understand what he was saying until a week or 2 later. And I was like, oh, and I put that in my act. And now that's the closer of the bit. And so so he's the one that gave me the thing that I like to close my act with. That was really cool too.
Very cool.
Wow. So doing something like that is giving you the end of the joke. He doesn't come back some other time and be like, oh, you stole that from me. You took it from me. He doesn't do that, does he?
Yeah, I want 15 cents every time you do that. He's another one too.
Because you hear
I
about
didn't
this a lot
realize-
these days, right? That there are joke thieves out there.
Oh, big time. And it's easier now than ever, because with the Instagram reel culture, you just need 40 seconds of a clip and you're off and rolling. So people are just taking kind of base level jokes, and borrowing each other's stuff, or you borrow a premise and change it that much. And I mean, when I was living in LA, it was part of the reason that part of the reason that I've shifted away is because I didn't really fit the LA scheme, which is probably why we get along so much. I didn't exactly fit the LA scheme, and there were times that I would be at shows or I'd be at open mics and I would try a new bit, and there'd be a guy that was in the room that would come up to me afterwards. It's like, oh, I really like that bit. And then 3 or 4 days later, I would see him post a clip.
Oh, really?
Doing a version of that bit. Yeah.
Oh,
Hustling.
wow.
And I was like, okay, this is.
Would you ever like send a message or anything?
One of them, I caught up with him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. One of them, I caught up with him when we had.
Where did that go? Where did that go? Like,
yeah, it was uncomfortable.
Oh, what was it like?
Yeah, I got him.
What
I got
happened?
him afterwards.
So what'd you say to him?
I think I recognize that bit that you. I recognize that bit that you did. You remember you saw me last Monday do that here.
How was his memory?
It's a
that was his.
Here's the thing I've learned, Mikey, is that East Coast aggressiveness is not appreciated everywhere because because it was a short-term win, but it was also a good way to not get booked by anybody in that room ever again. So yeah,
I guess it's sort of flattery. It's sort of
okay.
It's sort of a compliment.
Yeah, but worth it.
Yeah.
Maybe Chris, maybe you're not telling the story right. Because the version that I heard was you went over to him and you said, those jokes sounded familiar. Maybe you heard me tell that joke before. Well, if you do it again, I'm gonna break your legs, is what you said to him, right? That's what you said. That's what you really said.
Yeah.
That's what really happened.
Yeah,
you can be yourself on the air. It's okay.
I hit.
That's what I heard.
I hit him with the Christopher Walken. You do it again, I'll stab you in the face with a soldering iron.
Mike does a pretty good Christopher Walken,
I bet he does.
Yeah, you ever hear some of that, Mike?
I do know such.
Yeah.
I do know such. So, Chris, let's go back to. You got all the Chris's here. We got Chris Flail, we got Philly Chris, and we've got Christopher Walken. Right?
That's right.
Too many Chris's all over the place.
The gang's all
so. The gang's all here. So, Chris, talked a little bit about being an East Coast guy and everything like that. You've got origins in Pennsylvania. Could you tell us our audience, a little bit about where you grew up?
Yeah, sure. Born and raised in Pennsylvania. So I grew up, I like to tell people away from Pennsylvania that I'm from Philly unless you're from Philly, and then I'm from a whole other place.
Nice.
Philly Chris is from a whole other place.
That's right.
It's about 2 hours.
Well, our listener base is in Philly. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you told somebody who listens to our program over the airwaves that you're from Philly and then came out that you're from Schuylkill County, you'd be like, what is this guy talking?
What's this fraud? But the problem is
really severely wrong with this gentleman.
The problem is when I'm anywhere else, I say I'm from Schuylkill County, and they say, "Where is that?" And I say it's 2 hours north of Philly. And they go, "Oh, cool, you're from Philly." And I go, "No, please don't say that."
Definitely not Philly.
Yeah. So 2 hours north of Philly, small coal mining town where the coal left in the 19 teens and nothing really took its place. So my hometown was literally 1 square mile. I believe it's about 2,000 people in population. Grew up, we row homes. It's kind of the whole coal town deal. Went there. And then when I was in my 20s, briefly, I moved to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And then shortly thereafter went to law school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Mike and I met each other. And that's when my third year of law school, they had a comedy club in Tulsa called the Looney Bin. And that was the first time. Before that, I'd never even seen live comedy. I had only seen it on Comedy Central. So it was the first time I saw real live comedy. And it was the first time I saw road acts too, which is like, instead of seeing your Dave Attell's, it's just, it's some dude who lives in San Antonio and he does Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, that kind of whole circuit. So I saw that, and they had an open mic there, and I believe it was Tuesday nights. And so I saw a couple road acts. I was like, I can do that. And then I went and did the open mic and was absolutely terrified.
Do you have a recording of it, Chris?
I used to, but it was on Google Drive and it got wiped away. But Philly Chris, it's so funny you asked because I tell new comics when they start, when they're nervous, I say, you're so far ahead of me because for the first 4 months of comedy, I was afraid to touch the microphone. I was afraid to move the microphone stand because I was like,
Oh, okay.
there's no way I'm going to get it back where I put it if I take it away. So
Don't
what I
even
would
touch the
do,
mic. Yeah.
I would take the microphone out of the stand and then I would put my arm on the stand to kind of make myself look cool, like I was
Gotcha.
rested and relaxed. But the second time I ever did it, the microphone stand was kind of loosened up. So when I put my arm on it, 30 seconds into my first joke, I leaned on it and it went down about 5
Oh,
inches.
no way. Like
Yeah.
your worst nightmare.
And so by the end of my set, the microphone stand was about at the it was about at the middle of my thigh, and I had no idea how to fix that. So I just put them. There's there's video of me. There's video of me at the end of my set trying to pick it back up, and then I look off camera at the host and I go,
Oh, man. You
"There's
needed Eddie Murphy there when Michael
yeah,
Jackson asked Eddie Murphy to adjust the mic. Did you guys ever see that?
no."
Oh, we should play that on the show sometime.
No,
Michael Jackson's like,
it's
Eddie,
before
can
our
you
time.
adjust the mic stand? Yeah, probably. And then Eddie started doing it, and then he's like,
Mm.
"Why am I doing this? What? Because Michael Jackson told me to do this." I'm doing this.
Yeah. I needed an Eddie Murphy at that moment
Right.
for a multitude of reasons, the least of which was the microphone stand.
Mhm.
So that
So,
was
I remember the time that we went to come see the opening act, the road guy, so to speak, said
sure.
something along the lines of his opening joke was, I got some advice for everybody who started off here, and that's quit. And we thought that to mean you guys weren't any good. So I'm ready to go on there and drag the guy off by his hair. And as time goes on, I think you've said you believe that what he did mean was, hey, this is not the life that you want.
Oh yeah, it was a fair
Be
warning.
careful getting into this
He was
stuff.
doing yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fair warning.
He was doing us a favor to say
Yeah.
he wasn't saying quit saying you're not going to do this. He was saying quit saying don't be like me, kid.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm where
yeah.
you're
But it
trying
didn't
to
come off
get.
the right way. It's a good example of how when you're out there telling jokes, being off by one little bit can have a completely different meaning to your
Mm.
audience, right? If they don't understand what you're saying, you got to be an effective communicator, comedian, right?
Oh yeah, speaking of getting
Mhm.
one word off,
Timing and everything.
my second show after I moved to Bakersfield, I should say my second open mic was at this place where allegedly multiple people were shot and killed in the parking lot. Allegedly. It's no longer in business,
Mm.
but it
They
was a
they weren't
nightclub.
funny, or
It was a nightclub attached to a bowling alley. If you went to the bowling alley, and it was in a rough part of town. If you went to the
Mm.
bowling alley, you had to go through 2 metal detectors and get a security pat down, before you even got into the bowling alley.
Wow.
Next, attached to the bowling alley was a nightclub where if you went into the nightclub, you just walked in and did whatever you wanted.
Mm.
And
Okay.
at the back of the nightclub was a door that opened up directly into the bowling alley. So it was
Top security.
yes, that's right. It was a bowling alley for sheep where wolves were let in the back door, basically. And so my second time doing stand up there, I zigged when I should have zagged, and before that, I spoke for about 5 minutes about being from Pennsylvania, and when I zigged instead of zagging, 15 men got up, walked outside, and circled my vehicle, which still had Pennsylvania license plates on it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's always
Oh,
exciting.
great.
yeah.
Let's go back to Pennsylvania. What was the town like? You said it was real small. What was it like growing up there?
Were you
It
near
was
Centralia where the ground is on fire?
very close to there.
Okay. That's
Very
still
close.
going on, right? Like the ground's on fire up there,
Yeah,
right?
it just smokes. I think it's like mine fires below the surface or something like
Crazy,
that.
right? Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
that's really close, a few miles away. Um, I would not take back the upbringing for the world. I'm glad I grew up there. I'm glad I moved out at some point. It's the kind of town. It was a tough town too. It's the kind of town where um, you learn very early that being right is not always enough. You know,
Mhm.
and I joke around with people and I say, like, if you even to this day, probably if you go to my hometown and you go out to the bar there's like 2 bars or 3 bars in town. If you pick a bar and you go out to it 5 nights in a row, sometime between the first night and the 5th night, when you walk in, there's going to be at least one guy in there that decides it's your turn.
Mhm.
And he's going to look at you a certain way when you walk in. And you either have one drink and you leave, or you stay for a second. You're probably going to have to fight your way out. It's just that kind of, it's a pugilistic.
We should meet for a drink up there sometime.
Yeah.
We'll set it up so
But
like
was it
I'm already
that? Is
there.
it- you know, you're talking about going to the bars and having a drink and everything. Like, was it like that when you were younger in school? Were there a lot of fights and things like that?
Oh yeah, we have Vine Street Park was right behind the school, where every day there was like a main event where 2 kids were going to fight each other.
wow.
Especially when kids got older, it got a little bit different. But our high school was 7 through 12, so I was, I leave 6th grade. I'm a May baby, so I'm 12 years old for the entire school year, and I'm sharing a locker room with grown men who know my older brother who goes to a rival school and want to take it out on me. So
Your brother didn't go to the same school?
he did not. He went to a Catholic school a few miles away that was a rival school to ours. He went to Cardinal Brennan, which is not, it's not in existence anymore, but it was like a big crosstown rivalry.
Like football rivalry or
Big football rivalry and just town rivalry. It's different now because of social media, but back then it's hard to explain. It doesn't even sound like it was real. But like I said, my town is 2,000 people. There's a town nearby. It's called Ashland. That's 4,000 people. Frackville's 4,000 people. Monterey City's 4,000 people. And all these towns had their own, not just sports rivalry, but town rivalry. So in the summertime, there would be a number of occasions where 30 or 40 people from one town would pile into cars and drive to another town and fight 30 to 40 people from that other.
wow.
Yeah.
So you're having like miniature civil wars.
It was like the game Risk, but in real life. It's just
Sounds like a lot of toxic masculinity.
like the Hatfields and McCoys.
There was really, Chris, there was so many microaggressions going on.
Oh, I would imagine so, yeah.
Oh,
Did you look at me? You want to fight?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what I almost got beat up when I was in 7th grade one time because I walked into a school dance and it was like the movies. It was all the boys sitting on one side looking mean, all the girls sitting on one side being like, "What's happening?" And I walked in and I looked at my friends and I went like, "What is this?" And just from doing this, they're like, "Oh, this guy walking in like he's got all the answers." Now sit down. Okay.
Let's go.
And you're not even wearing camouflage shorts, which like that. If you didn't wear camouflage shorts and I couldn't afford them to the dance, you were just for that.
Oh, wow. There's a lot of working class people in the area.
Oh yeah, it is blue collar. The biggest industry in town is a pierogi factory.
Nice.
I spent a summer there. It was a blast. I worked the night shift. I worked 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. at the pierogi factory for a while.
How old
What'd you
were
do there?
I did the simplest things you could possibly do. I literally stacked boxes for 10 hours a night because no one trusted me to even put saran wrap around the pallet.
Listen, just don't go near the pierogies.
Yeah, so we're gonna, this guy's too dumb to even know when a pierogi's full of potato or not.
We know how you Chris's are. Why don't you come over here and stack some boxes for us?
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was 20.
42.
I was I was 36 years old.
That's his second job. He's a lawyer, comedian, and a pierogi box
And
guy.
a pierogi specialist.
I don't want to give it away. Yeah. I worked there too, by the way.
Yeah. I
used to do a routine there, a little comedy routine when I worked there, and this guy stole it from me. Yeah. It's true though.
That's
Philly Chris.
Look at this, man.
Look at that. You got the thumb club, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, your
You'll have to
thumb's
do that
been
later
moving.
for those who don't
Thumb
know.
buddies. Oh, Philly Chris, we're built. Billy Chris, we're built like thumbs. We've got good thumbs. Look at us go.
I got an
man.
audience here. They're chiming in now. It's from us all working together.
Look at us go. Between me and Philly Chris, we're 6 thumbs if you count our heads.
That's actually the secret password to get into the pierogi factory.
Exactly,
You stick
yeah.
up your thumb and make it
Yeah.
bend
It's also
backwards.
That's right.
It's also
And
an
you know, everybody
Illuminati
who's
thing.
in their car listening to the radio right now and listening to this show is saying, "What the heck are they talking about?"
Well,
We're all
as we always
bending our
tell 'em-
thumbs backwards. You really have to check out the YouTube
Yeah.
version if
We've
you're
got the
listening.
ultimate hitchhiker thumbs, folks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a weird. How many people have you guys met that have that? Not too many.
Very few. My
Yeah,
older
yeah.
brother. I know one woman in San Luis Obispo that has it, because when I do that at a show, I'll meet people that go, "Me too," and so I will. that's not me too.
Oh no, that's not that's bad news, bro.
I have a really
you might want to talk to a lawyer.
Yeah. I have a really good picture of this friend of mine. She's a comedian, and I did the thumb upside down. She did the thumb right side up, so we yin yanged each other.
Liberty
wow.
was asking us to explain why I did that.
Oh yeah,
Oh, you did
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thumb. So you got a thumb joke, right?
I do. I've got a thumb joke. I've got this long. So my closing bit's about 11 minutes long, but it's basically I'm talking about people thinking too highly of themselves, because I'm from a small town where like a big fish in a small pond.
Mm.
And I opened the joke by talking about, like, the valedictorian in my school still brags about being the valedictorian in my school. And it was 82 kids in my graduating class. And we were, is also 2004.
Huge.
We were No Child Left Behind kids, which on hearing that, the millennials all laughed, because I said,
So when are you going to stop bragging about being the valedictorian?
yeah, I was number 10. I was number 10 of 82.
You know, it's not a good look for you to say this valedictorian wasn't that smart, but
Mikey, I was number 10 out of 82. I didn't use a calculator until my sophomore year of college. That's
Oh, wow.
out of school.
Awesome.
But I do this bit about it's the ending bit is about 2 separate people that I met within 1 hour that had one leg. And one of them's really talented and humble, and one of them was not talented and very cocky. And so before I get into that, I say, like, I talk about the one. I say, hey, we've all got things that are a little bit strange about us, but you got to give people a second to adjust. And when I do that, I go, like, look, like, I can do this right here. And whenever I do that, the crowd goes, ugh. I'm like, yeah, but that's okay. I know you didn't expect that. And so I'll walk through it. And that's how I soften up to talk about the whole one-legged thing for 10 minutes.
well, one day you're going to be playing Madison Square Garden, and people are going to be showing up expecting the thumb bit. They say, "Oh yeah, we're going to see the guy with the thumb joke. That guy.
We gotta go see that guy.
We got to
We're
go
going to
see
need a
that
bigger
guy."
thumb tonight. Yeah.
You can put a quarter on it.
Then what happens when everybody in the world wants to come see you do the thumb joke?
I
Then
know.
does it kind of lose its luster? That because the whole point is that you didn't know that I was going to do this, and
What if I become the thumb guy? What if I become a prisoner to my own thumb? What if Listeners, please do not create an Instagram for my thumb that gets bigger than me. Please.
yes, you can get ratioed by the thumb Instagram.
I open for my own thumb in 5 years.
I got out of handcuffs with mine a few times.
You know, we talked about me possibly representing you, Chris, but as a conflict of interest, I already signed up your thumb.
Can't do it now.
He's
You
gonna be
pull
an
my
amazing-
thumb in a separate room and you go, look, it's time we go solo. This guy.
You
There's
should
a
take
lot of
this on
money
the
to be
road.
made here.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a lot of beige, vaguely brown guys we can use as space for this.
You don't need him; he needs you.
We're gonna hitchhike together across the country.
Nice. That's my tour bus is hitchhiking onto other comedians' tour buses.
You got any jokes I can steal?
So, when you were growing up there, you said your brother went to a different high school. How come you didn't end up at that high school?
Well, I was Papa's a Rolling Stone, Mikey. My mom
Too many
was
fights at the bar.
my mom was number 2 of 3. So I've got
Wow.
7 siblings and I'm an only child at the same time. So you
Oh
figure
wow!
figure that one out. So he was he's 5 years older than me, so he went to a school that was in the district where his mother was, and then I'm the only one in my family that went to Shenandoah, which is like the rugged, hard scrabble town of the area, and I was the softest, scrawniest, sweetest boy of them all. So I probably needed it, but boy, it was a long adolescence.
And is there a big difference in ages between all of you?
Oh yeah. So I just turned 37 2 days ago.
Happy
and
birthday.
Hey
now, give him a hey now, happy birthday.
Hey now, happy birthday. Welcome to 37.
Here's how old 37 is. It was 3 p.m. before I realized I was not 38 years old.
Hey, you got a whole year back, man. What are you going to do with it?
I know, it felt good. But I just started a new job last September. I told my whole office I was 38. And at 3 p.m., I texted my girlfriend. I said, honey, am I 37?
Did you pull the calculator out for
Do
that?
the math. I was like, look, I went to Shenandoah.
He was topping his class.
We went to law school because we're bad at math.
That's exactly, yeah. We didn't go to math school.
Yeah. What's the Fibonacci sequence?
No. So we've established that you're 37. How old's the oldest?
Oh yeah, my older brother is 41, about to turn 42.
He's old.
And my youngest
You don't know how old you are, but you know how old your other siblings are.
That's a good sibling, though.
Yeah. He's 41, and then my youngest sibling is 17.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Pop still has it. He still got him in the chamber. Still got bullets in the chamber.
Hey, De Niro just had a kid, didn't he?
Is that right?
I heard that. I think it was Robert De Niro.
Well, it's allegedly De Niro's. It's probably really Flail, though.
Yeah, probably. We'll have to check the thumbs.
We'll have to check the thumbs. That kid comes out with a backwards thumb. It's a dead giveaway.
Always check the thumbs.
Yeah, always check the thumbs.
So, did any of your other siblings end up moving out of Pennsylvania, or are they still back in Pennsylvania?
Everybody's there. It's funny, when I moved to Harrisburg, which is exactly an hour due south. Door to door, it was an hour from my dad's house to the apartment that I moved into. And when I moved there, everybody in my hometown was like, wow, you're brave for moving away from home. Like
wow,
you stay close by. And then Tulsa, like much further, and then California even further than that. So
you can be in Japan in a couple of years, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna be in Hawaii by next time we talk.
Nice. So did you end up going to Harrisburg before college or after college?
After college. After college, I got a job as a manager trainee at Sears, because working throughout school, I worked at Sears selling TVs. So this training program was based in Harrisburg. And so that's when I moved down there briefly, moved back home to take a job at this strange, kind of like not timeshare, but like investment property at a ski resort, Glengarry, Glen Ross style salesman's job.
Nice.
And I just felt I couldn't wash the grossness off of me after 6 weeks enough. And so I went back to Harrisburg to work at Verizon Wireless, and then went to Bed Bath & Beyond, not bragging. And then
God rest their soul, right?
And then
I miss being able to get the Beyond.
The Beyond is gone.
It's gone. It's all gone.
I jokingly say this, but there's a significant portion of truth to it. I went to law school to avoid having to do the presentation on the bridal registries and curtains in Bed Bath & Beyond.
How can I get out of this?
That's awesome.
They build this up under so much pressure of like, if you mess up curtains, you're fired. Curtains are like it's the big deal. And I was like, I gotta do something.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
I became a lawyer because Bed Bath & Beyond curtains was too hard.
No wonder why they went out of business.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean, come on.
How do you sell the curtains around here?
Simplify it, will you? I mean, geez. like Wolf of Wall Street for
Right.
curtains. Hey, I'm short. I'm short on 6 curtains here.
Coffee's for closers. Anybody
What
got
happened? I
coffee?
went long on bath mats and the whole industry tanked.
Did you play any sports in high school?
I did. So briefly, I played football till I realized I wasn't gonna become more than 135 pounds for a long time.
Hmm.
And so I stopped that early on, and then I was a basketball guy. So I cut out all the sports junior, senior year of high school, and I thought I was king basketball, but again, I was in a school of 82 kids, so somebody had to do it.
Right.
And that was the first thing that broke my heart. Actually, I thought I was going to play. I thought I was going to go to North Carolina to play basketball and become a Chicago Bull like every suburban kid mistakenly thinks he's going to. And then I did not play college basketball, and somewhere around 24, 25, it really sunk in that I was not going to be on the Lakers.
There's still time, Chris.
Was that around the time you were at Bed Bath and Beyond?
It was my second year of law school, not the first one. Not the first one because we won the intramural basketball championships. Not bragging, but hey,
you're at law school and everybody's like, "What are you going to do after law school?" I'm playing basketball.
What do you think?
Just waiting to get the call.
Do you guys know who I am?
Yeah, it was my second year of law school when I was getting dusted by teenagers, who were just communications majors, just hanging out and playing frisbee golf. That I really.
Do you see that guy with the thumbs? He can't even hold the
ball. I was getting beat. I was getting dunked on by country club kids in Tulsa, and I was like, all right, I think this is where it ends.
Could you dunk too?
I used to be able to.
Wow.
I might be able to dunk right now, but I would not walk again for the rest of the year.
It's no small feat. That's no small feat.
Yeah, I dunked for the first time. It was weird. I've always had strange mental blocks and inconsistencies. So the first time I dunked a basketball, I was like 15, 16 years old. But I couldn't dunk a basketball like at my school in an organized game, warm-ups or anything until after my senior season was over. I played in this North-South All-Star game, and in warm-ups I could dunk like nothing. And then as soon as they blew the whistle, I don't think I could have touched the backboard. It was like this weird, I've always considered myself a pressure performer, but there's also this thing. Liberty's got mental blocks too. I love it. There's always this weird thing when I get in my own head, it's over. I don't know what it is, but it's always been a strange thing with me. So I could dunk at an early age, but I got to be in the right mindset for it.
You've got interesting perspectives on mental blocks and things that are on the inside. Maybe not mental blocks specifically, but the inner psyche of people. Because I've seen you do this in jokes a couple of times. For example, that video you did about trying to go to sleep. You want to tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I've got like a lot of people, when I lay down to go to bed at night, the wheels just start turning in the brain, and they start just to spiral out on anything. And so I made a sketch out of it. And one of the parts of the sketch, I'm whispering to myself. I'm in bed trying to sleep, and then it cuts to me whispering in my own ear, saying, one of the things that I said was, "Hey, you remember that guy you hurt his feelings in third grade?" Like, God, I bet that ruined his life. And that comes from a real story where my mom and I moved from one town to another when I was in third grade, and I started going to Frackville Elementary School, and I was in lunch class, and after lunch, the teacher would have us all line up to go back to our classroom. So I was the first one done lunch, so she put me in line. There was no one else behind me, and I had my little boy's lunchbox with me, and I was just I was a happy-go-lucky little boy, just swinging my lunchbox back and forth. And then the teacher walked up and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, do you want me to put you in detention?" And I said, I was like, what? I was already a scared kid. I was like, what, why? She's like, "Do you see what you've done to him?" I was like, what? And I turned around, and this kid I went to school with, his name was Brandon Engel, was on 2 knees behind me because I had no idea they lined him up behind me. And for a good 45 seconds, I was just blasting this kid with a lunchbox.
Oh no!
And I had no idea. Now, do I look him up on Facebook every 4 months? Yes.
Does he have to wear like the Phantom of the Opera thing because his face is so disfigured from you beating him with a lunchbox?
Now he's having a great life, but there's a portion of the back of my brain that goes, I wonder how many spider webs he had to dig through in therapy to get past me hitting him with that lunchbox. And I can't get it out. I think about Brandon every 90 days and me.
Go Brandon.
How bad was he hurt?
He was fine.
Yeah.
He was fine. I was not a powerful kid. He got through it, but
Probably made him stronger.
Why do you think that is? I've also heard you say on, I think it was on your own podcast, about how you have this loop that goes on in your head of like the greatest hits of the worst things you've ever done. And that really resonated with me because I had the same thing.
Really?
All the time. Yeah. And
know.
I think that more people feel like that than you know.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm glad that you say a lot of this stuff about, the inner psyche, because I think a lot of people can relate to it, but not necessarily going to be going out there saying this stuff out loud. You look like a nut job, right? So,
that's exactly right.
What do you think it is that does that with you?
I don't know. It's funny you mentioned that. I grew up really scared and nervous all the time, partly from being in that town, partly from, I was a latchkey kid. So I was like, I'm working on a bit about this right now I'm starting to, I don't have it figured out yet, but I start by asking the crowd by show of hand, I say I suffer from anxiety. Who else in here? And I say by show of extremely shaky hands, who has anxiety? and then when people raise their hand, I go, how messed up would it be if I pointed you out right now and said, give me your name and a fun fact right now? I'd rather die than give a fun fact any day of the week. I really don't know what it is. And Mike, our mutual friend told me this, and I didn't know this. I read in some article, they said that there's like half the population doesn't have an inner voice at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we talked about that on the show one time. Maybe it was when you were on last time. I forget.
I would love to take a vacation inside of that brain.
Right.
Yeah, if they're not doing a task, there's like nothing going on.
Just
they're supposed to be really good workers. It's true.
I'm surprised that you suffer from that, Mike, because you're one of the people I admire most. Like I still don't know I'm good at anything, including comedy. And like you took this, we were in law school, and you 2 years in, you're like, I'm going to be a Second Amendment and constitutional lawyer, and I'm going to start my own practice in the Northeast, and I'm just going to do that. You didn't get internships in Pennsylvania or New Jersey where you could get a foot in the door and work your way through. You graduated, you went up there, you figured it out, and then 8 months later, you got a business. You're on the same network as Ben Shapiro now, and you just did it. I have no idea. I would never have guessed that you have all that stuff going on, because you're the one that the rest of us in our text thread that I hope to God never gets uncovered.
Next week on Mike G in the Morning,
no,
Mike's text thread.
Hey, there's no text
Thumbs up.
thread. There's no text thread. Allegedly.
Yeah. And I'm just like, this guy just did. I've been played safe Nancy this whole way, and I still wake up going like, when's it all going to come to an end? It's incredible to me. So to hear that you've got that reel in your head is very surprising to me.
You said that you're surprised that I suffer from it. I don't know that I wouldn't get carried away and call it suffering or anything, but I definitely think probably too often, I'd say, about those kinds of things. Like the guy I railroaded at Little League practice and had to ride home on his bicycle. Like stuff like that, which if you're a psychopath and you do bad things and you never think about it ever again, that's probably not good. So I think that
Well,
there are probably more people than we know who would do that. They're just not saying it out loud. No.
and to be fair,
Joe Biden.
yeah, and to be fair, Mike, you told me that story, and you were much younger when that happened. You were 29, and that's
Yeah. Well, they shouldn't have invited me to play at Little League. I don't know what to tell you.
Speaking of Papa Joe, have you discussed the CNN town hall yet? Oh my God, I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen clips of it.
The
Woo!
Trump CNN town hall.
Trump CNN town hall, man. Wow.
Yeah, I've only
haven't
seen
seen it
clips.
yet, yeah.
I've got it taped. I was going to watch it when we're done over here, so I don't
Oh,
have
man.
too much to say about it.
I look
think
forward to
the
hearing.
trial's pretty interesting because that came out this week too. The verdict on that civil trial,
Oh
and
yeah.
you know, from a lawyer's perspective, here's what that verdict tells me, and I hope I'm not crossing any lines for your comedy career or anything like that, talking about politics in this.
We're
But
I'm just listening.
from a lawyer's perspective, here's what that verdict tells me. The verdict was, if you haven't heard, it's a civil trial. This lady sues Trump, says that he raped her in a department store around 40 years ago. Doesn't remember what year or what month or anything like that, but he definitely her account is that he definitely raped her in a department store where nobody else was around. And a lot of stuff wasn't adding up. We'll just put it that way. So she comes out, she's able to sue him over this. And when the verdict came back, it's what Rich Roberts from my office would call an "I hate your face" verdict. He talks about the "I hate your face" verdict, where the person may have not done what they're being accused of, but the jury can't stand the person, so they'll come up with something.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is they did not find him liable for rape, but they found him liable for some kind of sexual assault. And somebody in the comments, Michael Clay, says statute of limitations. There are actually statutes that have been put into place fairly recently in different parts of the country, extending, if not waiving, the statute of limitations for these kinds of claims. So that's how they ended up getting into court. So ultimately, with them finding not liable on rape, but liable on this sexual assault, in order to do that, if you were to draw this through a logical conclusion, you'd have to say, the jury would have to say, we think you're totally making it up about the rape thing, right? Because keep in mind, this is a preponderance of the evidence standard. This is not a criminal case. This is not beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
This is 50.00001%. This is more likely than not.
Sure.
It's a very relatively low standard. We think you're totally full of it on the rape thing. But yeah, he probably did something along the lines of, I don't know. He did something somewhere along
We've
the
seen him
way.
be a creep before. I could take myself there.
Right, exactly. That's what they would have had to logically conclude in order to get there. I don't think that's it. I think they probably didn't believe her, but they don't like Trump so much that they're, we can't stand this guy, and this is what we're going to come up with. Take $5 million, everybody go home. So we'll see what happens on appeal. But it's never good as an attorney to have a client that the jury doesn't like.
I love the phrase. I love that phrase. I hate your face verdict. Have you ever had a? I guess I shouldn't ask you that.
What's that?
I was going to ask if you ever had a client that just had a hateable face or.
Yeah, probably me.
I think I represented Chris on a traffic ticket one.
Yeah,
time.
that's right. I remember that. The judge was like, "What's with that guy's face?
What's with that guy's face? His face is terrible."
Yep.
I had a teacher in high school tell me that I should wear a paper bag over my head when I come to school because he didn't like my face. Yeah,
You had a
Really?
teacher that said that to you?
I had a teacher who said that.
What's his
Wow.
name, Mike?
Oh, his name was Mr. Latore.
I'm gonna find him."
Mr. Latore ended up retiring early. We'll call it. I think it was retiring early, maybe.
That's a horrible thing to say.
He wasn't. He
honestly.
didn't finish up, so I ended up making his life absolutely miserable for the rest of the year because he said this on like the first day. Guy didn't know me from a hole in the wall. I get into class. That's what he says. We're in high
He
school.
just said, "Put a bag over your face."
Was he trying to joke and it just?
He
fell
starts like
flat, or-
laughing when he's looking at me, and he had been known to say some very strange things. He was known as being kind of a strange guy.
That's
But
very weird, man.
he starts
What
laughing when
grade
he's looking at me, and I said,
What grade were you in?
Sophomore or junior? high school.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
You were 32.
He
Yeah.
That's why I didn't like your face. You had a beard.
He felt
Oh,
threatened.
yeah.
He felt threatened. You were still 6'3". You look like Casey Jones from the Ninja Turtles. Mrs. Latore saw you at parent teacher night. She's like, "How you doing? How you doing?"
I have a feeling there was no Mrs. Latore, but yeah, he for whatever reason he did that. I made his life miserable for the next couple of months. I got sent to the dean's office, I think 11 times in one marking period in his class.
Nice, man. That's an accomplishment.
Why are we talking about this? Because of the hateable face, the I hate your face.
hateable
He
face,
hated my
yeah.
face.
I
He
have a
definitely
weird-
hated my face.
I have a
That's
weird
weird.
teacher story that I never even thought about, that I'm trying to figure out what to do with. I'm trying to figure out whether it's a bit or whether it's just something for therapy one of these days. I had a 6th grade teacher, and I used to tell this story. This was 6th grade, and this would have been what, 1998, somewhere around there. And our Christmas recital, in our entire grade, there were maybe like 40 or 50 boys, 40 or 50 girls. He had the girls all went out and sang Santa Baby. And then after the girls sang Santa Baby, he had like 35 or 40 of us boys dress up in wigs and dresses and also sing Santa Baby, like competing with that. And I have this picture somewhere, and I used to tell the story of like, I remember we all dressed up one time as a goof and sang Santa Baby. And then at one point I went, wait a minute. Like, we were a poor school. We didn't have a budget. Why did this guy have 37 pageant dresses just ready to go with wigs? We choreographed for like 12 weeks. He just dressed up like that in his classroom and sang. What happened with that? Why didn't anybody say anything?
You got these dresses at home, boys.
Yeah.
This teacher used to smoke cigarettes like in the closet of his, allegedly in the closet of his class.
Another thing with that video you're talking about, Chris, where you're going to bed and your brain's talking to you. You said something along the lines of, can frogs smell? And then you've got to go and research this in the middle of the night because it's going to drive you nuts, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was
Can
thinking
they?
about that, and that's something that's got to be relatively new to our generation, because if you think about, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you might have a crazy thought like that pop into your head, and maybe it would bother you a little bit, but you're certainly not going to get up and like look in the encyclopedia or something like that.
Oh, I did that all the time back in the 40s.
You broke out the candle. You lit a candle.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you
And
ever
now
consider that?
Now you just do it by reflex.
Yeah.
You have to, when you have a question now, you have to know the answer.
Sometimes I'll call Mike at 4 a.m. I'll be like, "Hey, are you up?"
And he's come through.
I got a question. Well, he does come through.
That can't be healthy for us, right, Chris?
No,
What do you
not
mean?
at all. And especially if you've got some anxiety, it just kickstarts everything. So the end of that sketch is a very real thing, where at the end I whisper to myself, are you sure you locked the door? And I go, yes. And they go, and I said, but did you? And I go, yes. And I go, but did you?
Maybe
And
you
then
should check.
and I gotta go like,
Mhm.
you never really know. And so after you go through that whole wave of, every bad deed you've ever done, every weird thought you've ever had, everything that you've got to do tomorrow, what did that guy, like, what did your significant other mean when they said that? Like, what does that mean?
Mhm.
You're about to have an argument, from 2 days ago. And then at the end, it always goes to, is everything okay? Am I okay? Did I just hear something? It's like, it's all.
So there's actually a deeper meaning to all of it, because there is a progression.
Oh
is what
yeah.
you're saying.
Oh yeah. And it just continues to feed itself. And then the end of the sketch is me, my physical self. I get up to go check the door, and I look back to grab my inner voice to come with me, and he's asleep. And then I walk out of the room all frustrated, and when I walk out, the inner voice picks his head back up and smiles and puts his thumb up like, got him. It's like we play this. We're all so okay that we play this game with ourselves all the time. I don't know how to stop it, which I used to think meant I was smart, but now I think it means the opposite. I've talked about this on stage before too, because you're not smart because you can't stop intrusive thoughts. It would be like if I told you I got to run outside because I don't know how to stop my car. Philly Chris, you wouldn't be like, wow, he must be a great driver.
top driver I know.
I don't know how to turn it off. You'd be like,
like, I'm gonna lock the door.
That's actually a pretty good point. If everybody's around, I'd like to bring her in this because she's got a formal education in psychology. If I am not mistaken, the last thing he's talking about is an OCD rather than anxiety. No.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Actually, one way to combat that, a type of CBT, and I'm not licensed, but I just had my core credits in my master's. But and something I've learned is you kind of like, you don't give the thoughts any value. You don't give them any, you don't make them alert you, but you also don't minimize them. You just kind of notice that they're there, and you say, oh, hey, there you are, thought. Okay, cool. Yeah, you go hang out, and I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. And you kind of doing that, and it takes away the urgency of the thought, because the more you try, think of it this way, the more you try to say, don't think of a pink elephant, don't think of a pink elephant, the more you're going to think of a pink elephant, right? Yeah. So the more you alert your brain that it's a dangerous thought, the more it's going to come at you. So you kind of just notice it there and say, oh, there's that thought again. Cool. How you doing? I'm going to continue with my day anyway, if that makes any sense.
Just watch it go by. I'm going to try it.
What if he really left the door unlocked, though, Liberty?
Did he?
Sorry, Chris.
Did he?
And the news story the next day says, man trampled by pink elephant.
So how many people approach you after something like that and say, yeah, man, you hit it right on the nose. You know, nobody's saying this.
That's funny you mention that, because that video is one of my, as far as numbers go, is one of my least interacted videos. As far as clicks and views go, it's one of the lowest. It's the one that people most reach out about. That's exactly what I have going on. It's very interesting that way.
Yeah, that's wild. Have you had that your whole life?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, and also the break-in scenario. This could.
What's that? Yeah, I want to hear that.
When I was 7 years old, my mother and I lived in an apartment in Shenandoah, and my bedroom was in the back of the house, and it had a door that led outside. And it's a small town, so you'd hear people walk through the alleyways, stumble home from the bar, or whatever, and I would hear people talk out there, and it sounded like they were about to come in the house. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Liberty, do you have any thoughts on that?
Look at us making breakthroughs. Liberty?
Look at this. This is impressive, yeah.
Actually, well, the fact that you have that kind of mind is probably exactly why you're good at comedy. It's exactly why I'm good at music. It's because people who create that way think of like normal minds are like here to here, like this is normal thoughts, like think of like a ruler. People with creative minds, they go outside those boundaries. So,
but he got that way because of some kind of traumatic experience. It sounds
that's
maybe your mom knew what she was doing. She was like paying homeless guys, like, "Hey, here's $10. Go out there and make it really sound. I want this kid to be something. I want him to get out of Frackville. I want him out of Schuylkill County. My boy is gonna go to Hollywood someday.
Yeah,
and so what I need you to do is really rattle him up."
That's right.
Get him going.
She's outside putting on a ski mask, and my dad's like, "What are you doing?" She goes, "I'm making that kid a star."
Put a smile on that face.
We don't want some normal, boring Frackville accountant.
That's right.
I have it's actually funny. I have the same exact mind. I can literally envision myself as a young kid hiding in the bathroom for like hours thinking that somebody was in the house. And I always thought there was a break in. I always thought somebody was going to steal me because my mom made me so like, I lived in the safest town. My mom terrified me, and she's like, and so I would like envision myself walking over to the school bus and somebody like literally hiding in the house that was like abandoned there and like grabbing me. Like I have the same exact mind. So I can think of, if you ever need to know a worst case scenario, just call me. I will tell you the worst case that can happen in any scenario.
Liberty, is that are you this way too though? Like I used to say this, like I am fantastic in a crisis. Like if we're in a building and there's a mass shooter, I'm the guy you want to be around. But if we go out to the parking lot and somebody doesn't use their blinker, I completely fall apart. Like it's like I'm a catastrophist. So like the worst the scenario is, the more comfortable I am. I've got to take my brain to the worst possible thing that can happen in this scenario and address it hypothetically, and then I can go about my day.
So that's actually a theme in intrusive thought / OCD thinking. Is that's actually considered a theme. There's catastrophic thinking. There's magical thinking.
Magical thinking.
Yeah, magical thinking.
I want to know more about that.
And that's ever hear like step on the crack, break your mother's back. And that's that's sort of a theme.
I did that as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, or like that germs can hop from here to there magically. It's like, think of it like magical thinking, catastrophic. And there's some more themes. I think all or nothing. Like there's just different themes. And so yeah, that just sounds like that's the mind. Not diagnosing you, but
no, please. I was just gonna say germs can jump from here to here. You can lead the CDC on some magical things.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, some of that going on the past few years.
But can't they? But
that's how you pander, baby.
Hey, Liberty, why don't you get see if you could fix that mic, because you're pretty important to this conversation.
Crackling a little bit.
Sorry, I'm on mobile.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, let's see if you can get that mic fixed, so that way we can get you back on here. But Chris, with these types of sketches, how do they come to your mind? You're just thinking about a million different things. One pops in and says that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of randomized, and one feeds the other. So I've been a little bit lazy lately and haven't gotten on it. And once you, it's weird. Like once you, at least for me, once you stop the momentum, they stop coming. But if I take the labor or push myself to write one, the next ones come really quickly. And it's like it's the same thing when I'm writing. If I'm reading for pleasure and I'm writing regularly, the ideas just flow out, because it's like you clear the gunk out of the pipeline, so good ideas can flow through. But for whatever reason, if I'm not doing that, it feels like so much built up to get an idea that gets through the crowded cafeteria of other thoughts. And is this actually a thing or is it not a thing? That it takes a while. So yeah, it just kind of, sometimes I'll just catch something on TV and it hits. Sometimes if I'm on my game, I'll sit down and I'll go like, what am I actually thinking about lately? Or what's on my mind? What's really pressing? Like right now, I'm buying a house. So I've got a new 4 minutes about buying a house. And 6 months from now, 30 seconds of it may still be relevant. Or I could have 12 minutes when I'm not as emotionally tied to it. I just don't know yet. But it's, for me, it's the doing the work where it comes from. But I've never been one of those where I can sit down and go like, okay, toasters. Let's make a sketch about toasters.
Nice. But you sit down with the intention of writing a joke or a sketch or something like that.
I will sit down. Yeah, I will sit down, and sometimes I'll go like, let's just finish a page. And most of it is just like self-wallowing, or like, this is what happened today, or we get through. And then all of a sudden you get yourself on a topic and you're working through it. So it's, for me, it's very much some of the busy work just to get yourself going and get the pen flowing.
How many times, Chris, have you had, Mike, like the best?
Say, it's a lot different than like writing music, because that seems to me a lot tougher to sit there and resign to. I'm writing a joke, as opposed to, all right, I'm sitting here playing guitar or playing the piano and messing around, and you come up with something and you build off of that. Sometimes you'll have a melody that comes to your head when you're out on the street, or in the middle of the night you'll wake up and hear something. Oh, I gotta record this real quick so I don't forget it in the morning. But to sit there and decide I'm going to do X, Y, and Z seems like it would be really tough. Is it?
It's tough, and you've always got at least for me, you've always got in the back of your mind. Not only is it got to be a specific thing, but I need a specific reaction out of this. That you have no idea if it's going to do that. Like I admire musicians because I've got a brother who's a really good musician, and he's got such a more pure love and appreciation and fandom for what he actually does. And it on the comedy side, you can get a little bit gristled and jaded and start to look at the end game and what the result is going to be before you take the time to like all my best stuff comes when I feel a little bit vulnerable and a lot of it grateful. But it takes so long to get my brain there as opposed to I sit down at the pad and I go, God, I haven't had a new bit in a while. I need a new bit and it needs to do well everywhere because I need everybody to know that I'm the best comedian who's ever lived. And then and then you're out. It's already over. But part of that is we're tied to a reaction that we have no idea we're going to get or whatever.
Right.
If you're playing music, you can show up at a coffee shop and stand in the corner and play music, and everyone can go about their day, and it's still a nice time. If I go to a corner and start telling jokes, and people in the back of the room are talking about their day, it's a nightmare for everybody. And so it's like it's not that I don't even think it's harder because music seemed to be such a more tangible talent than whatever it is that I do. I mean, I could be replaced by a rubber ducky in the right room. But the pressure dial is turned up because there's no way to go like, I'm into it. I'm just expressing myself because the whole art form is I need you to enjoy my expression of myself.
Right. That's wild. Were you ever into anything else that's creative, like art or music or anything like that?
Terrible drawer, but always wished I was better. Played the trombone so that I could get to high school pep rallies when I was in 6th grade. Quit halfway through the year.
Nice.
But always had a weirdo's mind. So I guess the mind of a creative and the big mushy heart of an artist. And so that was always there. And I always prided myself on my writing. Now, full disclosure, I was a terrible writer, but I thought I was good. And I had good ideas. And I went to a small enough school with some really sweet teachers that made me feel like I was something until I went to law school. And the first year we did legal writing and I got absolutely hammered.
Oh, that's like, a different kind of writing though. Isn't that a different kind of writing?
It's definitely a different kind of writing, but I was like, what a jerk this teacher is. But then I looked at it more closely and I realized, oh, wow, I'm 25 years old and I don't know how to make words possessory. Like, I don't know there, and there yet. I guess I've got some work to do. So it was that kind of deal.
Most people still don't know that one.
Who was your legal writing professor?
Richard Pascal. And I've still got a rivalry with him, but he did set me straight. He set me straight, and I deserved every piece of red pen that he put on the paper, but he didn't have to do it the way that he did it, you know?
Were we in that class together? Because I had him as well.
Oh, did you really?
I did.
I don't think we had him together. I don't think we met until the second year.
That's right. Well, we met the first year, but it was more of a walk in the library, kind of give each other a look, like this guy ain't from around here.
Two dogs sniffing each other.
Where's he from? I think we ended up on that intramural team together at the end of the first year. So
that's right.
Yes.
So it was right at the end of the year.
Right at the end of the year, yeah.
And it was love at first sight.
And you're everybody doing impressions of Professor Rice, and I was like, this guy's actually pretty funny. I'll tell you this though, walking into the library and through the school halls and seeing and everything like that, the impression that you get is not this is a funny guy,
Right.
I don't know. I don't mean that to be a compliment or opposite of a compliment, but you don't look like a funny guy.
No.
You don't hate his face?
I look like a very angry guy. I've got serious RBF that I cannot get rid of. I
think it's resting serious face. That's all.
Resting Syrian face.
Syrian.
Liberty saying, funny how?
Yeah. So part of it is these big bushy eyebrows. And then part of it is, like I said, I've got a crowded cafeteria going on in my head. And most of the time I'm just living in there and I don't realize I'm walking through a hallway while I'm doing it. So I think I'm like, but I'm
Ah.
walking through the hallway and I just look like I mean business because I'm thinking about like 7 different things at once. And I'm not even in the room that I'm in. So yeah, I look, there's a lot of times where somebody finds out I do comedy and they go, what?
That's funny.
You sent me that one promo poster of a bunch of people who were doing comedy at a place with you. And there's one dude that I looked at and I said, why am I looking at this photo? And the words in my head are saying, he should be considered armed and dangerous. For some reason, when I look at the picture, that's what comes to mind. Maybe
That's
people got
exactly
the
right.
same kind of thing going on with you.
You should
That's
replicate one
exactly
of the
right.
things at the post office.
I will say this, though. Have you ever been in customer service or anything like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, all of my young working life was customer service,
Really?
and that including like telemarketing, asking for donations at my undergraduate. It was all that. So much so that for many years after I left it, I would creep people out in department stores because I would smile at the like. I just felt like I was working. Like, hi, how you doing? And I get away from me. Get away
Do you
from me.
think that's impacted you professionally? Because it's one
Oh,
thing that I always thought you were really great at is in a professional setting, being you're polite, you're polished, that sort of thing. And you also seem to, throughout your legal career, since I've known you, whether
yeah.
it's an internship or a job or anything, you get any job that you want.
Yes.
You know, you're
Yes.
really good at selling people on yourself. I remember the first one time we were hanging out and you ended up getting a call from somebody who was interviewing you for something that you wanted. And I don't think you were expecting the call or anything, but they called, so you had to take it real quick. And you walked away, and just the way you answered is like, wow, that's a guy who knows what he's doing.
Thank
And
you.
he must have said, should I call you Christopher? Because your response was, you can call me Chris because I'm only Christopher when I'm in trouble. And I
That's
was like,
exactly
that's a
right.
perfect
That's
response.
great.
This guy is good, man.
That's exactly right. That was my mom, by the way. That's Pamela right there. She would do this thing where she'd grit her teeth and she'd go, Christopher. And she was a 5-foot lady. She's like, Christopher. So it was very scary until I was like 12. It was like, Christopher. And I'd be like, what man? Like, I was a little tiny lady.
What I do now.
So it is when I'm in trouble. But yeah, you're right. Like it was the customer service thing really helped. Being a sweet boy and at home being allowed to be a sweet boy, really like the thoughtfulness of that helps. And now I have a job that I'm good at. But for a couple of years, I went into private practice of things that I wasn't good at. And I used to, but the thing that they would always gravitate to me about is they'd be like, clients are going to love this guy. I mean, like I used to joke around, and in the interview room, I almost wanted to say, I'm not going to be able to do this job at all, but boy, are you going to wish I could.
You should make a commercial out of that.
Yeah.
That's hysterical. It's a big part of the job is for clients to like you, you know.
Oh yeah.
They're the guys who are really good at what they do, but client can't stand them. That doesn't help, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
So when you ended up leaving Pennsylvania to come to law school, that was the first time you went down to Harrisburg, you said, but leaving to go to Tulsa is the first time you actually leave the Commonwealth for an extended period of time.
Oh yeah, extended more than. So I had a godmother who lived in Myrtle Beach that I went to visit for a month one time. Besides that, only time I was and my mother moved to Texas when I was a teenager, so summers there, but I had never lived away from, like, I was a Pennsylvania boy, and I never saw that changing until randomly it didn't even occur to me to go, and then the law school thing happened and just kind of took the flyer and went down south.
How'd you end up going to Tulsa?
I'd be curious to hear your story on this too. Mine, it's silly, but it really worked out. I moved there sight unseen, and I moved there because I had only applied to a couple of schools. So basically, I took the LSAT. I was broke. I was dumb. I didn't do the studying the right way. I did okay enough on the LSATs to get some scholarship offers from out of state. So I applied at maybe 10 or 12 schools. I got in at maybe 5 or 6. Most of them, the administrative office is very cold and calculated. They've got like 200 to 500 incoming students, and they want your seat deposit. And after they get your seat deposit, they'll talk to you more after that. And then I called Tulsa, and this saint of a woman named April Fox picked up the phone.
April
And was about the sweetest person I had ever met.
Sounds like a movie star.
And yeah, and the last thing we talked about was like, and I, like I said, I was broke, and so we didn't even talk. That wasn't even anything. They're like, we want you here, and we'll figure out the rest later. And they set me up with a consultant to help me find an apartment. And like I never went down there. I never visited the school. I did an embarrassingly little amount of research on it, but I was like, if this is the person that they have working on this part, I'm in. And I just went to, and that was the whole deal for me. I was in, and it just happened to work out, luckily. But that was what I made the call.
That's amazing. Did people from home think you were nuts? You go, what's in Oklahoma? You know?
Yeah,
corn.
Yeah, corn. Yeah, they're like, yeah. No idea why anybody would go down there.
Did you have aspirations of being a lawyer at any time earlier than that, or was it something that?
It was always a fallback option for me. So again, I thought I was going to play professional basketball, but when I was 11, I looked up the deans of all the schools I wanted to play basketball for, like North Carolina, Illinois, Northwestern, Ohio State, and I emailed the deans, and I'm 11 years old, and I'm going to play at your. And I made email addresses related to their school. Like I think Northwestern had a running back at the time, or somebody had a Notre Dame, or somebody had a running back whose name was Autry Denson. And I made an email address that said Autry Denson is the man.
That's smart. That's pretty smart.
Some of these schools sent me flyers back and brochures and all this stuff. But my mom said, if basketball doesn't work out, she saw the writing on the wall before I did. She's like, if basketball doesn't work out, you should have a fallback option. And I just kind of said lawyer, and everyone seemed very pleased about that. And so then I shadowed with the district magistrate when I was a senior in high school, and it shattered my heart into pieces because I saw some schoolmates whose fathers got sent to jail, and I was like, I'm done with the law. Because I just didn't know anything about it. And then 2 years later, a family friend hired me to work in his office over the summer during undergraduate. And he was an attorney very much in the same vein as you, Mike. Like he had his own practice. He does kind of like constitutional based law. He does criminal law. He does some personal injury stuff, a couple big cases every year. And he's really good. And I got to see what that, and that's when I realized like, oh, it doesn't have to be like that. And then I was back in and getting out of school, business management major. I thought I was going to be a titan of industry. And a year and a half later, I'm at Bed Bath & Beyond, and I'm like,
I'm sorry to laugh.
No, it's good. I know.
He's a comic. It's okay.
All right. We always presume that you're trying to make us laugh.
Mike, this is a true story. This happened at Bed Bath & Beyond. I helped out this little old lady. I helped her order something online. And by the way, I was doing great at Bed Bath & Beyond. They asked me what it would take for me to come over, and I said it would take $52,000 a year, and they said yes, and I was like, wow. I remember calling my dad and going, I just hit the lottery, $1,000 a week for life, $1,000 a week for life. As long as I don't screw this up, I'll never worry about money again. And that was true, but it just wasn't my path. And I helped out this little old lady, and she didn't know anything about that. And she's like, oh, you're so sweet. So what are you doing? And she's like, are you working here while you're going to school? And I said, no, I'm out of school. This is my job. And she goes, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry. You're going to find something soon. And I remember
I won the lottery, ma'am.
I remember my head going, yeah. Well, that's what I thought. I remember going, this lady feels bad for me because I work here and can't get out. Imagine how bad she would feel if she knew I wasn't even trying. Like,
lady, I won the lottery. I don't even have to do anything. The Beyond stuff is all free.
I felt like going, hey, they're about to lay me off because they're paying me too much to not know about curtains. Just
then it became lawyer.
Then it became
when you got out to Tulsa, what did it feel like? Were you pleased at all, or
when I got to Tulsa? Oh
yeah,
loved it. I much like every town I've been in, I hated it for the first 2 weeks, and then a slow love affair got started that would never quite leave. I did get really scared though. I don't know if you ran into this. I remember driving into the state of Oklahoma, and before I reached Tulsa, just driving along that desolate highway with occasionally a house with the biggest satellite I've ever seen and 6 cars in the driveway that were all broken down. And I was like, where am I going? Is this what I just signed? I'm just going to live on the side of an interstate. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
And then you get to the city and it was beautiful.
Yeah. I had been in Oklahoma for 3 years at that.
Oh, that's right. You were playing baseball there.
Yeah. Yeah. But the first time I got out there, didn't know what to expect. A thing that I always thought was funny is when I got out there and people heard me talk, it's like, obviously you're not from around here. And I was like, oh, you're from New York? I bet y'all thought we lived in teepees. And my answer to them was always like, why the hell would I think you lived in a teepee?
Where did that come from?
I didn't understand it, but it was a very common question. It's a very common response that you're from New York.
Dude,
Two things that I got were I bet y'all thought we lived in teepees, and if I really wanted to be a jerk, and be like, no, this is pretty much exactly what I expected. The second thing was, do you remember 9/11? And say, no, what's this 9/11 you speak of?
Talking about? Yeah.
It's the two most common responses I got into that. If I was an orphan, you're gonna be like, oh, you remember when your parents died? You didn't forget now, did you?
That's so
Never
crazy.
forget.
You know they're dead, right?
Oh man, that's rough over here.
That's so crazy for them to say. I bet you thought we lived in teepees. It's like, no, we learned about Andrew Jackson too. I know what happened to the teepees. I did not. Yeah, I haven't expected teepees for many decades around here.
It's pretty good too. That drove nuts. They'd call me Yankee. Did you ever get that too out in Oklahoma?
And the other one is carpetbagger.
Oh, I didn't get carpetbagger.
I got
Carpetbagger.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yankees was funny though, because you guys do realize that Oklahoma wasn't a state during the Civil War, and that would set them off. They would lose it. Yeah, very sympathetic to the Confederate side over in Oklahoma.
That's what always made me laugh about people back home that fly Confederate flags. It's like, dude, you live above the Mason-Dixon line, idiot. What are you? They just shot a cannonball into your pickup truck, dummy.
Wild stuff out there.
Blammo.
You ended up getting barred in Oklahoma, right?
I did. Got barred in Oklahoma, and then around 2018, I realized that the ship was going to stay away from the port, so I got licensed in California.
So you had to take 2 tests separately. You sat separately.
2 bars. You did 2. You did them like consecutively, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's better that way.
Beast.
I think it's better that way. I would rather have done that than have to take 2 years off and then do it all over again. You know what I mean? Kind of like rip the Band-Aid off.
Just so that everyone knows. Before you become a lawyer, you not only have to take the bar exam, but you have to take a professional responsibility exam too, which has like it's a low threshold, but you don't know that going through. It's kind of, it almost feels like a box check of like, look, give us $150, take this test. You're going to be professionally responsible. So there's like, I forget what it is that you need, like a 120 or something like that as a passing score. Michael Giaramita got the highest MPRE score. We needed like a we needed like a 120. I got like a 127, which tells you everything you need to know about me, because I studied to be ethical, and 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 Mike got like a 212 or something.
You got extra credit somehow.
He was the only guy. He was the only guy that was mad to pass. He looked at. He was like, "Oh my god, what did I do all this work for? I got 200 more."
The higher scores on those tests just proved to me that I'm an idiot because I studied way too hard. It's that Michael Jordan disease. You've spoken about this too, that competitive nature where you're like addicted to.
Mhm.
I don't want to say, I'm probably sounding like a huge jerk right now.
You're winning. No, you're right.
You know what I mean? Where you've got to do the best that you possibly can, and nothing's ever good enough. I think that's probably what it is. Nothing is ever good enough, and you got to keep pushing yourself and pushing yourself and pushing yourself. Funny story about the MPRE, if you want to hear it.
Yeah, please.
I don't know what happened. I studied very, very hard for that test. You know, the way I studied, you might remember this, is I'm an auditory learner. So if I hear things, I can remember them.
Okay.
I sit there and read them, it might not have the same effect. So when they had those Barbary lectures and stuff like that,
Yeah.
sit there and listen all day. You know,
Yeah.
the 3-hour lecture, I'll listen to it 5 times that day, over and over and over again.
I wonder if that's why you can memorize things so well, Mike, like the way you can recite things back.
Yeah, if it's in my
Maybe
head,
there's a connection there. That's interesting.
If it's in my head, so that's
Mhm.
that. You know, I just non-stopped it for a week or whatever, and then we get to the test, and I don't know what happened, but I sit there, and maybe 5 minutes in, my stomach starts making this noise. I'm like, oh boy.
Uh-oh.
So I'm like, let me just take a quick break, take a walk, see if this feels any better.
Doing that
And it was like a whole big deal. Like I asked if I could go use the restroom. They're like, oh no, you gotta because you're in the middle of a test, there's like this whole protocol and procedure that you got to do in order to leave the room. So I didn't end up leaving the room, and I said, I remember looking at question. I'm like, skimming through a question like this. B sounds good. Yeah, B.
B for bathroom. I need the bathroom, somebody.
That's hilarious.
So I had many other things on my. I gotta get out of here and get to my bed, get home.
That's hilarious. So that would be if somebody's like, how do I do great on the MPRE? You'd be like, study a whole bunch, and then 20 minutes before the exam, go to Taco Bell.
You'll get everything right.
And everything.
Just trust your gut. Trust your gut.
Yeah. Just go with your gut. That's funny.
That was fun. So what was it like for the bar the second time? I mean, because that's a grueling schedule. I remember you'll appreciate this. So the first time I had a clerk of mine taking the bar who's gone on, phenomenal attorney that I work with. He's got his own office in Virginia.
Nice.
And first time he was like the guy I was the wise guy who was giving him advice before the bar. This is that first run through with that.
Sure.
And I remember telling him, do what you got to do, because he smoked periodically. You got to smoke cigarettes. I mean, I was smoking at the time to take the edge off. That's not the time to try to quit or anything like that.
Yeah.
Make sure you put in your time, study, 9 to 5 every day. Right. Don't slack off on that. Do what you got to do. And understand that, it takes being bright and it takes mental toughness, because one thing was that after I got done taking the bar, I had a different respect for people I knew who did that in the past and were attorneys. Because before that, when you're in law school and you're working at a firm or something, you might meet people, whether it's at your firm or at other firms, you say, this guy's an idiot. This lawyer's a total idiot.
Yeah.
And it becomes a lot more difficult to dismiss people like that after you've gone through that process of studying for the bar, going through that grueling process and then taking the bar, getting through that. And I had a different way of looking at them, saying, you're very intelligent and you're tough as hell for doing that. And I was just passing this along to my clerk so he knew what to expect and everything like that. Just do what you got to do. You're going to understand that you're going to look at attorneys differently when you're done with this. So he does what he's got to do. He does marvelous on the test. And after he was like, you know, I got my results. I passed. Thank you so much for your advice and everything like that. Yeah. And I said, what exactly, you know, hit you? He was like, well, when you told me that in order to do this, you got to be smart and you got to be tough as hell. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't mean any of that. There's some attorneys are total idiots.
Totally
you know, that
bubble.
guy's a freaking moron.
That's what I was thinking in the back of my head is none of us have any idea why we passed that test. Boneheads.
But I think it's interesting that you took it a couple of years out, because the first time you took, because your first job did not require a law license, or did it?
No, first one, neither the first one nor the second one, nor the current one. So I wanted to do it, and I thought there may be a time where I would want to or have to use it.
So did you take the bar right after you graduated, or was it a couple of years after?
Was a cut. So we graduated in 2014. I took the Oklahoma bar in 2015, the next year.
Okay.
And then years after, took it in 2018 in California, and it was also weird for me because I was working full time while I did it. So I used to get to the office. So I would get to the office before everybody anyway. So I would get to the office around like 5:30 in the morning. So I hate to say this, but at the time, the first 60 to 90 minutes of the day, I would spend studying for the bar. And then when everybody else came in, I'd be working. And then at lunch, I would work out. And I found some bar exam related podcasts that while I worked out, I would just listen to those podcasts. And then after work, I would do the full, you know, I would do from like 4 p.m. until, let's say, 10 p.m. of studying. But I would go out to comedy stuff when I could, and I would either bring the books with me, or I found on this place called Bar Max has like, for the multiple choice portion of the bar exam, they've got like 20,000 actual bar exam questions, and they had an app on your phone. If you bought it for $250, you had access to all the questions, and you could access it from your phone. So I would host the open mic that I was running at the time. In between comics, I would do 3 or 4 questions and then get back on stage, bring up the next comic, do 3 or 4 questions, and just do that whole deal. But I'd already taken it once, so that helped. And so, like you said about the Michael Jordan mindset, like I kind of get off on, like, I like to run when it's dark and rainy outside. Like I like I'm at peace when everyone else would be suffering. And so it almost charged me up to go like, I'm going to get through this day and get all the studying in and get enough to do whatever. So it almost gave me a little bit of a lift where if I probably didn't have the job, I probably would have slacked more and wouldn't have studied as much anyway.
Wow, that's crazy. There's another difficult component of it, though, is that you're not fresh out of law school anymore.
Right.
So a lot of these, I'd imagine that you're not using all of these, you know, the majority approach principle, because nobody uses this in the real world, with the majority approach and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I took the California bar, and the term beforehand, I think only like less than 50% of people passed. And I walked into the conference center in Santa Clara, and in my assigned seat next to me was a girl wearing a Stanford sweater, and on the other side of me was a girl wearing a Yale sweater. And I was like, well, I don't know which one of these other girls is going to fail. I know about old bonehead in the middle. And so Lexi and I went to Las Vegas after the bar exam, and the whole trip, I said that, like, I was trying to be a good sport, but I remember saying, like, I wish I had a little bit more of a realistic optimism that I could have passed, because it would be such a better time if I'm almost certain I failed. And then the week of the Wednesday, I think it was before Thanksgiving, was when the results came out. I was on my way to a show, and I got the email that I was opening for, I think it may have been Al Madrigal or one of some comedian like that. And just by reflex, I checked the results. I meant not to. I wanted to wait until after the show. I checked the results and I just stared blankly at the screen like, that's my name. Of like in the past, I passed.
Nice.
And so I went to the gig and I went right up on stage and I told everybody I just passed the bar exam, and 250 people went bananas.
That's awesome.
Best joke ever, right?
But I was only a 3-year comic. So for the next 15 minutes, I ate it. I couldn't follow my own success on stage. I bombed it. But it was a good opening, so that was all.
Yeah, that's okay. It's okay.
And it only need to take.
Well, you'd rather pass the bar and bomb the set than fail the bar and have a great set that night.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't cost $5,000 to do comedy.
You had me at I passed the bar exam.
That's it.
That's the thing.
I should have just said thank you, good night.
Boom.
Did you think about that at all when we were going into finals that one year? And you think about the amount of money it costs to go to school for a semester. So first semester we're in there, and you have no idea where you stand in the class, and you kind of tell when somebody's a bright guy or something like that, and kind of tell when, hey, this guy ain't going to be around for too long. But other than that, you really don't know the ins and outs of where you stand. And
Right.
I remember going into that first semester finals and thinking, each time I sit, there's $5,000 on the line, essentially, right?
Wow.
It's $20,000 a semester. You got 4 tests. So it's almost like you got $5,000 on the line every time you take the test. Or if you want to be more mathematical about it, it's more like roulette, right? Because you could screw up one of those tests and you lose all 20. So it's like 20 grand's on the line 4 times in a row.
You're right. And
so it helped me that I was bad at math and thought that it was 5.
It's all going to be okay.
No pressure. This is like $50. Who cares?
Yeah, right. No pressure at all. It's only 7 times the value of my car. That's all, right?
Mikey, you
remember the car I drove?
Yeah, I do. I love that car.
I should have kept it.
Chris and I. To be fair, Chris, you had the Pontiac, right?
The Pontiac G6.
The Pontiac. Okay.
The Pontiac G6.
All right.
Yeah.
So you had a nice car compared to me.
It was the 4-cylinder. I didn't have the V6 G6. I'm not a rock.
It was a nice car compared to me, but that's like saying you were the the smartest guy in the smart class.
Your car was like the Long Island Batmobile.
When you saw the cars that some of those other kids drove onto the lot, though, right? The ones whose parents were lawyers.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that I met many other people. Like, you didn't have any lawyers in your family, right?
I have people.
I don't know. I was asking, is there like that?
I have people in my family fully entrenched in the legal system, but no lawyers.
The law school of hard knocks, right?
That's exactly right. No lawyers.
But I was in that same boat. I didn't know anybody who was a lawyer or anything like that going in. But a lot of kids whose dads were lawyers, moms were lawyers, and they drove in there with some pretty nice cars. But you know what my coach once told me, Chris, is that starving wolves hunt better.
This
is true.
That's why we ended up where we are.
That. I had one of those legacy kids flex on me one time. Like, we were just teasing each other, but he flexed on me one time, and I said, think about where and what you came from, and where and what I came from, and we're in the same spot. You should be embarrassed of yourself.
That's pretty good. That's good.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
You ought to be ashamed.
Your parents would be disgusted right now.
Yeah, to know that you can only make it to where I got.
Yeah. You know I'm a wolf, right?
You were asking how.
If we flipped houses, I'd run the world by now.
You'd be cleaning up.
You were asking how I got to Tulsa. I applied to every law school that I could find that was free to apply to, because you remember they had a fee to apply to a lot of these schools.
Yes,
smart.
And I think I came up with like $200 or $300 aside to apply to a couple of ones that I wanted to, because I think the application fee was usually like $50
Yes.
or $100 or something like that. But I
Yes.
came up with enough that I could apply to, 4 or 5 that weren't free, maybe.
Right.
And I don't remember exactly what they were, but I think Tulsa was one of them.
Also,
And the reason I did it was because it was in state. Maybe it was like Tulsa and OU.
Yep.
And
I was the same.
and that's what I
I-
maybe some others in New York and stuff like that. And I ended up getting scholarships to a number of the places, and for the amount of money that was offered, it became, do I want to pack all of my stuff and end up somewhere else in the country?
Hold on,
do
we're
I-
under attack over here. Sorry.
You're under attack. Or do I want to just move my stuff 90 minutes up the road?
Yep.
And it's interesting because there was a delay with OU. Did you have the same thing did you get into OU or
No.
did you apply to OU or?
No, I did not apply to OU. I did the same though. There were a number of schools that they waived their application fee.
Yeah.
And so I did the same thing. So I got into Tulsa, Widener, which is in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Hofstra in New York, Stetson in Tampa, Florida, in Miami. But
Dickinson's in Carlisle. I got to correct. I'm the Pennsylvania guy now. I'm the captain now.
Widener has an office somewhere near.
So there's 2. Widener, they have Commonwealth Widener, which is in Harrisburg, right across from the first law firm that I worked from. And then they've got one in Delaware where Rich Roberts from my office went to. So there's 2 Wideners. It was Widener though?
It was Widener. Yeah, it was definitely not Dickinson. It was Widener. So I had those schools I was looking at, and I thought about going to Widener just because, like you said, it's a couple miles up the road. But they had that weird, I just got this weird vibe when I talked to them on the phone. I was like, man, if this is what it's like when they're hypothetically trying to get me.
Right.
It's gonna be like once I'm there. And I almost went to either Stetson or Miami, but Miami had already spent all of their scholarship money, and Stetson it spent a good portion of it. And then Tulsa, I was in, and they waived the application fee. And they really wanted out-of-state students at the time, so they put together an attractive package that was helpful. And I had already taken too much out in undergrad, so that was a help. And I was like, all right, here we go.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was this close to not being at Tulsa. Well, OU called after the fact and was like, "Good news, you got in." And I was like, I already moved my stuff because I moved out to Tulsa early. And it's like, it's too late. And had they called, a couple of weeks, a month earlier, maybe I never end up over there. You and I never meet. Maybe I never even get into guns,
Crazy.
Who knows?
Yeah. Or you end up at Tulsa anyway, because 1 year you beat up one of those pompadour haired boys.
You're out of here.
I mean, I could imagine the culture shock of you. We already know about the mommies and daddies kids that went to our little humble school. I can't imagine somebody Google guy dropping you into the OU student body. I'd pay money to see it.
Well, I don't know. It's you end up at a place for a reason, right?
Yep.
All the little things that you think are going wrong at the time, because kind of like you, what did you do to study for the LSATs?
I bought a book by Princeton Review, and at the beginning of the book, they had a practice test, and I did what I thought was good on the practice test, and I went, okay, I could just study this. I could just keep studying this my way. And I didn't listen to the lessons in the book at all. And at the end of the book, I took the practice test. I got the same score. And I went to this testing center and I got 5 points less than that. But it was just good enough to get me at the bottom of the trench coat into wherever I ended.
That is one thing, passion at the time was still being a ball player and everything like that. You know, while it was time to do that, and that's where I was devoting 100% of my attention. Unfortunately, went through a rough transition and getting hurt and having that final surgery where couldn't recover and was ultimately not cleared to play. So yeah, you kind of forced to make that decision. It wasn't exactly something that I was dying to do. It just seemed like the next logical step at the time.
Sure.
So I'll be honest with you. Say you bought a book from Princeton Review. I bought a book called LSATs for Dummies.
Nice.
I kid you not.
Nice.
And I don't think I made it halfway through the thing. I mean,
You were too
sat there.
smart for it.
You said you took a practice test. My practice test was the LSAT. Like when I sat down today, and you know, you always think I should have done X, Y, and Z. You know, I should have prepared, should have done better. That was not the wise thing to do, but you end up where you're supposed to do. I mean, one of my first cases out of law school, this U.S. attorney, and somehow works into the conversation that he went to Harvard. And what do you think my response was, Chris? If you could think of a wise ass immediate response from Mike G, what would it be?
Well, we technically, our school was on Harvard and Yale, so take that. Cross streets. It was almost like they're antagonizing us. The cross streets of our campus was Harvard and Yale.
That's pretty funny.
That is true.
That's a good response.
My response to it, he said something about he went to Harvard, and I said, "Really?" He said, "Where's that? I never heard of it." Is that like an online thing or something?
Is that accredited?
Yeah, my face. Nobody cares where you went to law school.
Hey, look, we're in the same place.
I got enough. How do you like them apples?
Your parents know I'm a wolf.
You know, looking back at your journey and how you've made it from Pennsylvania to Oklahoma to California, is it kind of wild looking back on all that? I mean, do you ever think about what would happen if you would have stayed in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I think about it all the time. It so easily I could so easily be selling TV still. Like I was until I was in my early to mid 20s. Like I was selling televisions for $7 an hour, and that was not going to change. And the I was a very, in a lot of ways, immature kid that's just stumbled into a couple things or was likable enough, and the ball bounced just a little bit right, and this little thing, like a little thing here or there, happened where it totally couldn't have, and just little steps along the way to just keep trying and to get lucky a couple of times. Like I mean, so many things happened. Like there was a time between 2L and 3L year where I finished up an internship, or I'm sorry, 1L and 2L year, and there was a good chance I didn't have the money to continue. Like it was going to come to an end, and I randomly got a check from a class action lawsuit of Bed Bath and Beyond.
Oh wow!
No.
I forget what it was, for like $1,400 or something like that. And it was like buried in the mail at my dad's house. My brother just happened to find it, but it was like, it just happened. Like I needed the 1,400 at the time.
That's funny.
And then there was another time where I was about out of money, and I got a call from a family member that was like, "Hey, you remember we used to get those little certificate of deposits for you on your birthday when you were a baby?" And I was like, "Kind of." They're like, "Well, they matured now, so that's like $1,600. We didn't want to give it to you until you were an adult and you lived on your own, and I thought you'd need it. Some just gave me the instinct that you might need it, and I needed it." And it was like stuff like that, like little pieces on the way. It's why, like, I feel it's funny. Like
If you
there's
don't
a lot
believe
of,
in God, bro, we gotta have a talk.
oh yeah, yeah. Like I look at some of the people that I end up in rooms with now, and they're like fat cats and all that stuff. And it's why, like, whenever I'm at like one of those networking mixer events, if I can get away from my table, I'm hanging with the staff because I feel like I feel so much closer to that than any banquet room with raspberry vinaigrette dressing and people, talking about how nice their cufflinks are and all that. And it's like, there's so like such a sliver, in my opinion, of luck and whatever else that from there to the other. And I've had friends I grew up with that I was like, that person's going to have a rocket ship attached to them. And they got one wrong thing or the other wrong thing,
Right.
or they hurt their back and got the wrong prescription. And now they're not here anymore. And I'm like, that could so much more easily have been me than whatever this thing turned out to be, no matter where it goes. That, yeah, I'm a bit of a grouch, just a curmudgeon in life. But there's quite a few times that I look and I go like, man, did that work? Like I remember 1L year going, I want to live in California someday. And after 1L year, I go, well, that's not happening. I sent my resume to every law firm and they're like, nope. And then I got an internship that wasn't even in traditional law with a company, and they had 5 business units across the country, and one of them was in Bakersfield, California. And at the end of the internship, they asked me where I wanted to go, and I said Bakersfield, California. And the HR person said, "Great. No one ever requests that. You'll definitely get it."
Wow.
How about that? That's interesting.
Yeah. Had you been to Bakersfield, California before?
Sight unseen.
Sight unseen. That's like the name of the game, right?
That's how I do it. I blind date with my towns.
But you seem to have fallen in love with Bakersfield, California.
Oh, I can't get enough of it.
You can't quit Bakersfield, California.
I won't quit you.
Yeah, they're stuck with me now.
What is it about Bakersfield that you love?
I'm a small town boy, so it's just big enough to be a city. It's about 500,000 people, but it's just small enough to not be overwhelming and any bigger than that. And it's got everything I want and need. And 2 years ago, I left and decided that I thought I may have gone stale here, and I was trying to find bigger and better. And I went to bigger and better, and realized very quickly that however you want to slice it. If you like me, you could say it's not for me. If you want to roll your eyes at me, you could say I couldn't hack it there. But I very quickly realized, like, what I'm trying to do, I feel like I can make it. I feel like I can make it in the place where I want to live. And if for some reason I can't make it happen, I've put myself at peace in my mind that I could live with that, doing it my way. And I'm like, if I get a chance, I'm going back. And then it just happened there was an opportunity to come back, and 6 weeks later, I was a Bakersfield boy again.
That's awesome.
That's
awesome. They call it the Schuylkill County of the West.
That's right. That's right. And my specific home is the Centralia of.
Oh, that's great, man. I've had a blast with you. I appreciate you being so generous with your time.
I love you to death.
Hey, this was long overdue.
And
you've been, I don't know if I got to pipe in and tell you to shut up. You're being too kind, but you're far too complimentary of me, the things that you've said. And, I think the world of you. And, everybody on this program is very excited, including our loyal listeners, for seeing the things that your comedy career has to come, and how far you've come as it is already, because you're getting some pretty major traction on social media, and it's just a matter of time before we see the Chris Phil Netflix special. And it's going to be called Can Frogs Smell? Can you call it
that? 2 thumbs sideways.
Yeah.
No, hope the thumb doesn't get a Netflix special first.
Right. You already got that.
They're going to have to put a new button on the "Do you like this" portion.
That's right.
The sideways thumb.
Yeah.
I actually envisioned like all the people in the audience at Madison Square Garden doing the thumb thing. I don't know. I had this
Put your
envision.
thumbs up in the
Looking at
air.
their own thumb.
But like in
Wave them like you just
like
don't care.
in a cool way, hey, we could do that too. Like all the people who relate. You know what I mean?
Or you could
a
sell
foam double
sideways
jointed
foam
thumb.
thumbs. You
Yeah,
instead of a
yeah,
foam
foam
finger,
thumb.
you get a thumb that goes to the
That's a
side.
great idea.
Exactly. Instead of the lighters too.
Yeah, that's
Great
actually
idea.
that is a good idea. Good marketing.
36,000 thumbs.
36,000 thumbs. That's the
Mhm.
second special. The
That's
first
the
one's
second
comprised.
special. It's in Madison Square Garden, and it's called 36,000 thumbs.
Oh man, this is
Mm.
genius. I hope you had fun. We
Tons of
definitely
fun.
had fun.
Anytime you have me, happy to join. Love you guys to death, and you're the best guy I know, Mikey. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Let's I got to close this one out, but I got something special for you while we close it out. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor David Whitney, Professor Phil Duffy. I'll be joining as your legal analyst. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.